What's going on, everybody? And welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, and alongside myself this week, talking Clash, everything that occurred during the Clash this weekend, man. I am so excited. We finally saw cars back on the track. Um, Man, Bowman Gray Stadium, give a shout out to yourselves. I mean, I get it. I mean, it might not have been the capacity of the LA Coliseum, but man, you sold out. Like, you guys were incredible down there in North Carolina. For someone that lives up in Pennsylvania, right outside Philadelphia, I got to say, man, congratulations to the fans down there. You guys showed out. Fox kept talking about all of you for doing such a tremendous job of selling that place out. It was incredible to watch. We'll be talking everything Bowman Gray Stadium, the Clash weekend. But before we get started, a couple announcements before we kick things off. First, I want to say multiple ways to listen to us, and I want to say thank you to all the new fans and the new followers. You guys have absolutely been gems and absolutely fun to follow. A couple of us have had plenty of discussions throughout the race weekend this past weekend. A lot of love and support for our podcast, a lot of love and support for yours. News articles, websites, podcasts, everything. I'm very fortunate with all the friends that I kind of made in this community right now. When I first started, I will have to say this. When I first started, I didn't think that people would listen to me. I really didn't. I was like, I'm a northerner. I'm from right outside Philadelphia. They're gonna be like, dude, this guy has no clue how to talk NASCAR with any of us. But it's such a great community, man, and I really do appreciate everyone's love and support, and obviously the massive support that we've gotten. A lot of credit to a lot of the people. Thank you so much to everybody, and it's been such a fun run. We're going into year 3 together, and again, continue supporting us. If you have friends that love watching NASCAR, feel like that this is a good podcast for them, come on in. We love to have you guys join us. Ways that you can follow us or listen to us: Tuesday night on YouTube, we do a live stream at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, our station. Join us. We have a new thing coming up, and I'll be telling you that in a second. Also, if you did miss our live stream on Tuesday nights, our shows will be uploaded on multiple platforms on Wednesday afternoons. Those platforms: Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Spotify, of course, is our OG. And then, of course, we'll be uploading the video up to our YouTube channel as well at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. So, multiple ways to listen to us. If you love what you're hearing or you find this enjoyable, again, I appreciate everyone that does find this enjoyable here at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. We really do it for you, and we just love talking NASCAR with all of y'all. Um, if you do find this enjoyable, subscribe to our YouTube page at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Follow us on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. Plain and simple. Just click follow, and that gives us a massive amount of support as well. So appreciate everyone that has come through for us. Tonight, we are loading on our YouTube chat. If you are listening to us live on air on YouTube, our chat has now become the Blown Engine chat line. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from the fans. Did your favorite driver strike out this past weekend? Did your crew screw up your favorite driver's strategy? Did your favorite driver get spun out? Anything. Chat, and I will become the voice of reasoning for you on why everything's okay. As Aaron Rodgers once said, RELAX. Relax. Blown Engine chat line is up and running. We'll be getting to the chat line in a few minutes. Show announcements this week. Again, you guys will be hearing us talk about this for a while because we really want you to join us if you love our podcast. First up, Pocono, June. We will be there. Our annual Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast tailgate. Last year was a blast with our fans. We did post some pictures, so if you don't think we're serious, we are serious. We want to get bigger and better and have some fun with you up at the Tricky Triangle. Also, this summer, we will be at Dover. We will be doing a live episode down at the Monster Mile, similar to what we did at Martinsville. We'll be out doing a live episode with the fans right outside the track. So come on by and come listen to us live on air. All right. That's going to take the green and white checker flag out on tonight's show announcements segment. All right, before we get to Bowman Gray Stadium, I want to rip through some of these sponsorship updates, keep our fans informed on what's going on because, again, we are 12 days away from the Daytona 500. So things will be ramping up coming, it'll be ramping up within the next couple of days. Sponsorship updates courtesy of jski.com. Again, if you have not followed them, I don't know why you haven't because they're incredible with breaking news sources and all that. Follow them on Facebook, X, or by web at jski.com. So, sponsorship update number one: Fox plans subscription streaming service, including live sports. Fox is finally planning to make its sports programming available via a direct to subscriber streaming service. A lot of people have felt that Fox has always been behind the eight ball compared to other streaming services such as TNT, which we'll be talking about in a second, NBC with Peacock, HBO with Max. Fox joining the game. Update number one. Update number two: Comcast. We saw this today. Comcast renews partnership with NASCAR. Xfinity Fastest Lap revamped. Really excited about this part. Comcast announced today the renewal of its decade-long partnership with NASCAR, continuing its role as both a premier partner of the NASCAR Cup Series and titled sponsor of the Xfinity Series. The Comcast and NASCAR relationship began in 2014, and the collaboration between the two companies has significantly contributed to the sport's growth and fan engagement. The premier partnership has been renewed for multiple years, with the Xfinity Series titled sponsorship being extended for 1 year. So after 2025, it will not be the Xfinity Series unless the deal comes through. But here's the fun part: new to the sport starting in 2025, race fans can look forward to the Xfinity Fastest Lap, which we've seen in races throughout probably the past decade plus more. Um, but here it is: the Xfinity Fastest Lap, a program that awards one race point to the eligible driver and owner with the fastest single lap in each race, adding extra intensity and strategy to the competition. This new feature will be part of all three national series: the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, and the Craftsman Truck Series. So, Xfinity doing the fastest lap. Whoever gets the fastest lap in 2025 in all three national series will get 1 point to the eligible driver. I think that is something I think all of us fans can get behind. We can kind of rally. Everyone's been saying, well, we don't really reward consistency, or we don't reward, you know, we don't really reward the speed. Well, NASCAR heard your complaints. The Xfinity Fastest Lap now will reward a point to the driver eligible. I think that's pretty cool, and it's a great addition to the sport going into 2025. Something else to talk about throughout the whole entire season, which I'm super excited about. Update number three: Interstate Batteries extends partnership with Joe Gibbs Racing. Christopher Bell is going to have Interstate Batteries on his car for 4 races in 2025, while Ty Gibbs has a sponsorship in Nashville in June. Um, Also, in that article, I think it said Interstate Batteries has been in the sport now for 34 years. That's insane. That is absolutely insane. Update number four: PPG Paint sponsoring Josh Berry in the Brickyard 400. Update number five: 23XI Racing partners with Virtual Gaming Worlds. 23XI Racing announced today a multi-year partnership with Virtual Gaming Worlds, an interactive entertainment company harnessing technology and creativity and deliver world-class free-to-play games. So in case you were wondering what Virtual Game Worlds was. Number six: Shady Rays is going to be partnering Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick in 2025. I'm wearing sunglasses right now because, quite frankly, I like the look. But these are not Shady Rays. But Shady Rays has been a big partner with Denny Hamlin for a couple of years now. No surprise that they're heading over to 23XI Racing, 2311. But they'll be partners with Bubba Wallace and Tyler Reddick through the season. Update number seven: speaking of Hamlin, National Debt Relief is going to be sponsoring Denny Hamlin in 4 races in 2025. Those 4 races are going to be the Daytona 500, the Circuits of the America, the Coke 600, and the Talladega Fall Race. So Denny kind of recouping some of the sponsorships that he has lost with with FedEx, bringing in National Debt Relief, bringing in Kings Hawaiian. I will say this before we get to the final two sponsor or final two updates. I saw the Hamlin hauler in a picture this past weekend from Bowman's Gray. And I gotta say this. I mean, it's really sad to see FedEx gone. FedEx is gonna be one of those sponsorships I know in the next few years. When I say what's one sponsorship we can bring back to NASCAR, I have a strong feeling that FedEx is gonna be one of them. That hauler is whew, that is completely white. If you haven't seen it, we'll post it on our Broken Wheelberry Podcast Facebook page. It's sad, but happy to see Denny land National Debt Relief as a sponsor. Final sponsorship update before we get into the final headliner. Update number 8, Bank OZK sponsoring Kyle Busch in multi-year, multi-race deal. So I don't know if I pronounced that right. If someone knows the company well enough, feel free to let me know if that was pronounced right. Final headliner from jski.com this week. This one's really interesting, and I really like this. TNT Sports and HBO Max to launch inclusive NASCAR drive cam and audio experience in 2025. TNT Sports today announced the launch of a brand new NASCAR drive cam experience exclusive to Max. This will offer motorsports fans the ultimate all access pass to every driver for every lap, for every race throughout the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Launching with the Cookout Clash at Bowman Gray this past Sunday, NASCAR Driver Cam on Max will offer users the most comprehensive access inside each driver's car, up to 40 drivers each race, including a layered audio mix of scanner team radios and car noise, all synced up with a 1080p driver cam feed on supported devices. At launch, fans will be able to choose between individual driver cams or two preset multi view stream options featuring four drivers each, chosen based on the most compelling matchups and storylines each week. Bleacher Report Racing's X and Instagram platforms will also run a weekly poll to enable fans to vote on which four drivers will be featured on a special fan selected multi view stream on Max. Final point from this, each individual driver stream will have integrated live stats, which we love on this podcast, stage, lap number, position, and race status, along with data including speed, RPM, gear, and more. Users will be able to pause, rewind, and fast forward live video as well. And a replay of each individual driver stream will be available following each race. So, um, TNT Sports and Max, again, they're going to be launching an exclusive NASCAR driver cam and audio experience starting in 2025. I have to say, I really do believe that NASCAR heard a lot of fans complaining about availability and access. I think they've watched a lot of sports in this country that has kind of fallen apart because they have not integrated that into their sport, aka the NBA. Um, I love this. I absolutely love this. As a race fan, as a guy who loves stats and data and analysts, I want to hear what these guys are talking about. I love the booth. I love what the guys say in the booth, but I want to hear the chatter between the crew chief and driver combination going on in that race. I want to hear what they are seeing, what they're feeling, what the as simple as fuel mileage. I think that this is incredible as a NASCAR fan. And I know a lot of fans going exiting 2024, going into 2025, they were really skeptical, they were really nervous, and they were really upset with, well, it's not on cable television every single week. Now I gotta download all these subscriptions. NASCAR saw what the NFL did with Amazon Prime. And I know that this is TNT Sports and Max, but the NASCAR saw what the NFL did with Amazon Prime. And if you have watched Thursday Night Football, not the main broadcast, but the other broadcast, the way that the game is portrayed and seen from the viewer standpoint, you feel like you are in the game watching the legit matchups and the mismatches one on one. NASCAR definitely probably saw that and said, how do we integrate this? We have Amazon coming on in 2025. We have TNT and Max coming on in 2025 as well. This is incredible for the sport. You talk about bringing in new fans and engaging. Let's call it as is. I mean, NASCAR's NASCAR. I mean, there's going to be few fans that do tune in. There's going to be fans that don't tune in. But what is the one thing that as NASCAR fans, and what is one thing in this country we've heard the most about over the last couple of years? F1's coming. F1's coming. F1 is coming. This is some type of F1 shit, dude, that NASCAR just integrated. They saw what the NFL did. They see what F1's doing. You need to attract younger fans and demographics. You need to attract them. And how do you attract them? Make them feel like they're in the race. Make them feel like they're in a simulator. Make them feel like they can actually see what they're talking about. It's very easy for a fan to get turned off by NASCAR and sit there and go, all they do is make left-hand turns. All they do is go high speeds, make left-hand turns. Maybe they go on road courses here and there. With this now, a new fan that has no clue the significance. The average fan, like myself, the average fan, like any one of you I talk to on a daily basis about NASCAR, we know what the hell is going on inside of a race. But as a newcomer, and I feel like NASCAR may have missed the boat with this, and I think they're going to catch up and they're going to help themselves out. But I feel like coming out of the pandemic, they should have been able to do something like this. But the problem is television contracts. Not now. Incredible news, and it's super exciting. And I'm hoping that this brings in a lot more fans, as it should. It's similar to a little bit like F1. So, final headliner again: TNT Sports and Max to launch exclusive NASCAR driver cam and audio experience starting in 2025. So, those are your fast headliner sponsorship updates courtesy of jski.com. Once again, guys, follow them on Facebook, X, or web, www.jski.com. If you're a diehard NASCAR fan, that's the place to be with everything related to NASCAR. So we use them a lot. Love the guys. Love the information. Love bringing it to you and to the plate. So before we get into the Bowman Gray discussion this weekend, let me jump into the chat line and see what is going on. Like I said, it's the Blown Engine line. So if you're listening to us live on YouTube, feel free to jump in and explain yourself on why you're pissed off this week. James checks in. Evening, Intimidator Matt. Thanks, James. I appreciate it. Yeah, I got the sunglasses on. If you're not with us on the live stream right now, I got sunglasses on and all that good stuff. I actually feel pretty good. I might actually be doing these shows more so in these sunglasses. Again, these are Heat Waves. If you're looking for a good pair of sunglasses, a pretty good price, best bang for your buck, I recommend Heat Waves. So, James, thanks for checking in, and appreciate you being on live with us on YouTube. Cool. So I going into Bowman's Gray discussion, I really wanted to ask the audience tonight this one question, and it kind of struck me. Obviously, I'm a diehard Philadelphia Eagles fan. So for me, my mind's kind of been with the NFL for the last couple of weeks, couple months. I know some fans that listen to the show may hate that because they can't stand Eagles fans. I get it. There was clips about some Eagles fans that were kind of assholes during the playoff run. That's not me at all. It just comes with the territory. But every fan base is just like that. And I kind of relate it to NASCAR fans, right? Like there's some NASCAR fans that get reckless and they get really aggressive against other fan base or drivers' fan bases. It's silly, it's stupid, but again, it happens. But getting out of the NFL discussion with the fans, this past weekend, Bowman's Gray really, really got me excited for this upcoming season. And like I said, my mind's been in the NFL. And again, with watching it on Fox, I sat there and I kept listening to the Daytona 500 preview commercials. And it was incredible. But my mind wasn't there yet. And credit to NASCAR Gambling Podcast, who has absolutely done a tremendous job. Tremendous. And if you're a gambler, definitely the podcast to listen to. But they have done this daily countdown to the Daytona 500. And today, Going into the weekend, it was like, 15 or 16, 15 days until the Daytona 500. Again, the Bowman's Gray. Now it's really hitting me. I'm like, holy shit. There's cars on the track. There's cars running in a competitive race for the first time since this past November. Today, I woke up to the NASCAR Gambling Podcast's Facebook picture again, and it's 12 days away from the Daytona 500. And I asked this audience tonight, and yourself listening on either Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Spotify, I ask you this. I know Bowman's Gray and the Clash is not a points paying race, but did this past weekend give you a little appetizer that could fulfill you for 2 more weeks to get to the Daytona 500? For me, it did. For me, it did. But I'm also a guy who loves to eat. And for me, I feel like the Clash doesn't give me enough. Yeah, it's amazing to see cars back on the track, but we want to see guys win points paying races. Was it an appetizer for the Daytona 500? Absolutely. But it just wasn't enough. Bowman Gray's Clash weekend discussion with all of you live. Before we get started on the Clash itself, another question I want to ask the audience. And this question came out, kind of formulated this question like as the weekend was going on with the Clash. And there was a lot of fans on Facebook. There was a lot of fans all in general that sat there and was just like, this isn't real racing. This isn't great racing. This is what Woke Car wants, is a demolition derby. And I have to ask this question to the audience. And I asked it on Facebook and I got no answer yet. Can someone explain to me what real racing in NASCAR is? Can someone explain that? I hear a bunch of fans go, well, NASCAR wants to send the sport over to the West Coast. They want to send it to cities that don't care about the sport, that don't know how real racing exists. Okay, well, what did NASCAR do? We're taking it out of the Coliseum. Our contract's up, taking it out of the Coliseum. And we're going to take it to the heritage and a grassroots track of NASCAR, Bowman's Gray Stadium. Taking the Clash there. I was opposed to the Clash being at Bowman's Gray. And that's just because I didn't think North Carolina in February was a good idea just because of the weather. I was a fan of the Coliseum. I thought the Coliseum was clever. I thought it was kind of a destination place. A little warmer weather. Yeah, it was a man-made track, but very clever idea. You guys aren't coming to the track. We're going to bring the show to you. And that's how I felt with the Coliseum. But these fans hated it. Hated it. How dare NASCAR put it in California? Southern California is not a NASCAR market. How dare you? Okay, no worries. Take it out of Southern California. We take it to the Heritage Track this weekend. All weekend. Any Facebook group you go on. Any caller on Sirius XM radio that calls in. That's not real racing. That's not real NASCAR racing. What is real racing then? What is real racing? This is a great time for you if you're listening live to jump into the chat, maybe defend yourself. I mean, obviously on Facebook, we've got plenty of platforms for you to sit there. If you're one of those people that did not think that this was real racing this weekend, like you didn't think the Coliseum was real racing, this is a good opportunity for you to chime in. While you're thinking about your response, let me tell you what I feel is real racing. Real racing for me is having drivers run quality laps. Very important. Also, it is making the adjustments that are needed to go win the damn race. I was an athlete growing up. I still am. I'm a competitive powerlifter. My goal is to win. These drivers' goal is to win a damn race. So I need the drivers and the crew chiefs to make the adjustments throughout the race to ensure they can contend for a win at the end of the race. And my final point on what real racing in NASCAR is. Again, this is not F1. This is not F1. This isn't follow the leader. This is NASCAR. I want my drivers to bump and move someone out of the way. I do. Not intentionally wreck them, but bump and move. What attracts me to NASCAR the most is the aggressive personality that this sport gives compared to other forms of auto racing. If you watch F1, Max Verstappen, one of the best drivers in the world. I know I joke about it. I know I joke around with people about it. Shout out to my boy Dave. He's a big F1 guy. But this isn't F1 though. Verstappen, you turn on F1, you see Verstappen basically take off, and it's like, all right, he's got the best car, he's got the best equipment, he's the best driver in the circuit. It's a lock. I want this sport to beat and bang. That's what makes me so attracted to it. It makes me want to watch more of it. Again, I don't want anyone hurt. I don't want anyone intentionally wrecked, but wrecks happen. I fell in love with this damn sport because I watched Dale Sr. rattle Terry Labonte's cage. I was 8 years old when that happened. I was an 8-year-old boy. Fast cars, loud engines. I grew up with a bunch of mechanics. I'm mechanically like declined. I can't. I mean, the best I could do is turn a wrench and lift things out of the car. I don't know what the hell some of this stuff does, but I love the engines. I love the roar. That interview at the end of the race, I wanted to just rattle his cage. Well, to some of these fans, we saw that in the last couple years, but it wasn't real racing to them, guys. Real racing. The other thing that made me fall in love with this sport is, again, I was young. I would watch Tim Richmond highlights with my grandfather. He hated Tim Richmond. He liked Dale Earnhardt, but I loved Tim Richmond to death. I would watch him and Earnhardt beating and banging each other to win the damn race. Again, it's about winning. Most importantly, as an analytics guy, as we move forward into a new era of NASCAR, as an analytics guy, I did fall in love with the sport due to the speed, the roar of the engine, and the adjustments drivers and pit crews can make to ensure they can win a race. That part's a lot of fun. Those guys are so athletic on pit road, dude. I don't think and I've had friends that don't even know anything about NASCAR. They'll watch the pit road. They'll watch the pit crews go out there and they're like, holy shit, these guys are so talented and so athletic. They're so good. Yeah, these are former college athletes, man. It's competitive. I'm sorry, and I don't mean to rip anybody. And if and you feel offended by me talking about it, good. I want you because this is what you're. This is who it's meant for. I can't stand the fans that go online and complain each and every freaking week about how NASCAR is not real racing anymore. Okay, there's shades of the old series in this series. There's shades of it. There's some drivers that act like it. But then again, that's not good enough for you. But then you'll sit there and tell me that Dale was trying to rattle his cage, but then sit there and blame Austin Dillon for intentionally wrecking. NASCAR racing is still the most entertaining form of auto racing in the world. It is. It is an aggressive, passionate type of form of racing. And I get it. Some of these drivers get reckless, but some of these drivers, man, literally have a small window of opportunity. And as a prospect guy myself, who does the research on prospects, some of these drivers, when they get to the cup, that's it. They have one shot. Now, granted, intentionally wrecking someone is not great, but it's going to happen. Some of these tracks are so small, but it's an aggressive form of racing. So again, if you are on that part of, well, Bowman Gray Stadium wasn't real racing or the Coliseum wasn't real racing, you'll have plenty of opportunities tonight to text us or chat with us on our Blown Engine line. I want to hear from you. What is real NASCAR racing? Because I've given you 3 decades of examples within the last 10 minutes of NASCAR racing. I'm just starting to think that some of these fans just don't like the venue and they just want to go back to Daytona, which we'll get to at the end of this episode. All right, let's dive into the Clash discussion and what we saw over the weekend. Um, Sunday was absolutely, or actually all weekend, I thought was some pretty good racing for the most part. Um, I want to shout out to Trioval Life who set up the NASCAR Ain't Dead Facebook group chat page on the race. Some great chatter with some great people in that. Um, and he kind of brought it up, right? I mean, he didn't think it was great racing. And the cautions in the middle of the race in the second half of the Clash on Sunday night got a little ridiculous. Even in the last chance qualifier, got a little ridiculous. But man, and Trioval said it best. He goes, I got to say, the last 80 laps of that race was very entertaining. And I completely agree. Totally agree with that. Last chance qualifier. Kyle Larson and Josh Berry, they end up finishing first and second in the event. Ty Gibbs ended up missing the main event after multiple issues in the last chance qualifier. The biggest thing coming out of the last chance qualifier, I think a lot of the pictures are going to say it best, was Ty Gibbs basically going airborne, trying to knock Justin Haley out of the race. Um, you know, and I get it. I mean, Haley did not have the best weekend. And that's where I kind of feel for, this is where I will say this. I feel like the Clash is a very lose event at this point, where if we're on short tracks, you could piss somebody off that could affect you going into the season. Um, I'm really interested. Like I said, do I think a lot of the Clash, what we saw this weekend, is that going to carry over into 2025? Probably not. But Justin Haley did get into some issues with multiple drivers. Kyle Busch was primarily one of them, and same with Ty Gibbs. And again, Ty Gibbs ended up retaliating on Sunday. Out of the last chance qualifier, Ryan Blaney ended up taking the points provisional. So Logano ended up advancing through a heat race, and Ryan Blaney, I think I want to say, I mean, Fox didn't really show it, but Blaney kind of went on the track and was just like, I'm out. He's like, Logano advanced. These guys are too nuts. I'm out. Couple things in the last chance qualifier that I did like to see. So I was a little skeptical going into this weekend with Bowman's Gray. I did not know how the high line was going to be. And after the last couple of years at Martinsville, right, like the high line prevailed for what, a lap and a half. And then you kind of had to bump right back into the low line and basically run the train. Complete opposite of what we saw at Bowman's Gray. We had multiple drivers in both the last chance qualifier event. I mean, in some of the heat races, they tried it. Practice, they tried it. And then, of course, in the main event, there was drivers that were willing to take that risk and that gamble and run the high line. It worked for a while. It did. Josh Berry ran it in the last chance qualifier. Now, granted, like Eric Jones ran. I thought Eric Jones actually had a pretty decent race on Sunday in the last chance qualifier. Unfortunately, he ended up getting wrecked in the race. Austin Dillon, I thought was I thought Austin Dillon was Austin Dillon. He was aggressive. I thought he was going for the win. He tried the high line. Larson ran it for a little bit. But that last chance qualifier race, man, there was so many cars. I mean, even when Barry and Kyle Larson ended up finishing that race, I texted one of my friends who's a diehard Larson fan. I'm like, does Larson have anything left for that main event? I mean, that car's destroyed. But like I said, I did see some things in the last chance qualifier that I liked. And then again, there was some things I didn't like. Primarily, there was a lot of cautions. I did not like Ty Gibbs retaliating. I get that he's frustrated and I get he's mad, and I understand that Haley probably did him wrong. I get it. But to slam into another car where you went airborne, I get you're trying to take him out of the race, which I think Haley would have taken himself out of the race. Let's call it as is. I just wasn't a fan of that move. I heard Denny Hamlin, he wasn't a fan of that move whatsoever. Um, Again, I have no problem with a driver being pissed. I have a massive problem with the driver going in full force and trying to just completely destroy someone else's car. That I have a problem with. Again, Ryan Blaney did take the points provision once Logano locked in the other night. Like I said, I think Blaney just basically went on the track and said, "Yeah, this is too crazy." Ended up going back down pit road. Ends up calling it a day. Gets into the final event. Final event though at the Clash. Again, We were talking inside the NASCAR Ain't Dead Facebook chat. We had some really good chatter within it. I thought the first half of the race was very interesting. I thought it was a very, not to use this weird expression, but I thought it was a very racing race to begin the session, right? The first half. I think the cars were I think the drivers were just trying to figure out where the cars are going to work well. I thought that drivers were also like, you know what? There's still so many more laps. We still have a halftime break. It's not worth trying to get into a wreck here. So Chase Elliott started on the pole. He won Heat 1, or he won basically the pole in qualifying, won Heat 1, completely took off, and led the first 95 laps of the race. Chase Elliott, to me, was unstoppable for a majority of that first half of the race. I actually posted on the Facebook group, on my Facebook page, and I had a fan that basically said, yeah, Chase had speed, but anyways, Chase Elliott was very good in the first half. The one thing I did not like about Chase Elliott's car, though, was in the last 5 laps, he did get caught by Denny Hamlin, and Hamlin did pass him. Hamlin and Reddick had a very interesting strategy. We'll talk about that in a second. Let's go back to Chase Elliott. So, again, he was absolutely incredible in this race, all race. He had, like I said, in the end of the first half, he was a little. I mean, he started slowing up. Car got tight. Couldn't get around lap traffic that much. He did have a ton of speed all weekend, though. He had a ton of speed. And the other thing that I really thought was interesting is that he ran that diamond line, and then when cars got closer to him, he just basically hugged the bottom of the lane. But it's what he did in the second half, right? So Hamlin ended up catching him. Hamlin passes him with I think it was like 4 or 5 laps to go. I forgot. I think it was 4 to 5. Hamlin ends up passing him. Hamlin takes the lead going into halftime. And then Reddick ends up passing him as well. So Elliott finishes third in the first half. I thought whatever him and Alan Gustafson did on the adjustments at the halftime were sensational. Going into the second half of the race, you saw that there was there was like 5 cautions within like 20 something laps. But then once they started figuring it out, once the field ended up basically going green for a while, the last 80 laps were sensational racing. And again, Chase Elliott, what I really liked about what Chase Elliott and Alan Gustafson did, and this is probably what helped, this is exactly what made him win this race. Whatever adjustments were made at halftime, they made sure that car did not fall off at the end of the run. So they went 80 laps, right? He got around Reddick. He got around Hamlin. Him and Hamlin beat and banged for a little bit. He ended up taking the lead from Denny Hamlin. And then he had a hard charge of Ryan Blaney. But the one thing that Chase Elliott did, again, he got through lap traffic very cleanly in the second half, unlike the first half, right? He had issues getting around Kyle Busch in the first half of that race. In the second half, he ended up bumping drivers out of the way and made some clean passes. Now, granted, within the last 10 laps, you saw some Chevrolets kind of move over out of his way, like Larson and Byron and Bowman and Busch and Suarez. They gave Blaney a little bit of fits, but at the same time, I thought that Chase Elliott did something. Chase Elliott kept the car low. And even when Blaney came in on runs, he was prepared to absorb the bump and shoot forward. On Facebook, as I said, I thought he was running the diamond line in practice a little bit. He was running the diamond line in qualifying. He was running the diamond line in Heat Race 1. I pointed out that the diamond line may end up working in this race. Trioval Life, he ended up commenting on the post, and he said the Elliott line or the diamond line's good, but if the nose gets underneath him, he's going to spin. And the one thing I thought that Chase Elliott did very well late in this race, not just the adjustments at halftime to make sure that car doesn't fall off. He did not run the diamond line as much as we thought. And he hugged the bottom of the lane. he hugged it. And like I said, the best thing he could have done was he was able to absorb Blaney and continue pushing forward instead of absorbing it and getting out of sync. Chase Elliott ended up leading 171 laps, which was a race high. The one thing I will say though, and yes, is it sensational that Chase Elliott led 171 laps in the Clash? Sure, absolutely, no disregard about it. But Fox is sitting there going, "Oh, this is a Clash all-time high. This is a Clash." Well, listen, Mike, Kevin, Clint, they started racing 200 laps only 4 years ago. Yeah, they were running 75 laps at Daytona. Of course, 171 laps led is going to be sensational because they've only done it for 4 races. But again, going back to Chase Elliott, leading 171 laps, he was a very dominant car. Like I said, qualifying was sensational. Heat race number one, he ended up winning, and he started on the pole. And again, for all the fans that are like, well, he was in the front the majority of the race. Yes, that's correct, he was, but he did fall back to third, and he had to climb through the field. He had to climb through the field again through Reddick and Hamlin, who both of them had a different strategy and a very interesting strategy. And the final point about Chase Elliott and why this win was a little bit impressive is he held off Ryan Blaney, a hard charging Ryan Blaney. Got to give credit to where credit's due. Chase Elliott was absolutely incredible in this race on Sunday night. Another driver that was absolutely incredible in this race. We've been talking about it. We were just talking about him. Ryan Blaney. Ryan Blaney, to me, I thought was the driver of the night. Okay. Um, I wasn't really impressed at all with Ryan Blaney this weekend. I get it. His Heat 1 race, he ended up spinning out, but he finished 10th. He qualified in the qualifying event, he was ranked 9th. And he had to run through the last chance qualifier. But I think the decision that Ryan Blaney made in the last chance qualifier, basically going out on the track and then going behind pit road, was the best thing that he could have done. He saved his car from getting beaten up. For me, Ryan Blaney was bat fast and he flew through the field. So for a lot of these people that are like, well, this next gen car has a bad, it can't really pass. Like, we didn't see this at the Coliseum. We didn't really see this type of style of racing from this next gen car on the short tracks all through the last couple of years, right? We have different types of tires now. On Sunday, we saw a driver go right through the field, and when it was time for him to go, he went forward. We also had drivers go backwards. But I gotta ask this question: are we surprised that Ryan Blaney was good at Bowman Gray? Are we surprised by that? As some people in the audience, some people on Facebook, some people on, in the media think Bowman Gray is a flat short track. It's a quarter of a mile. Martinsville is very similar, but a half mile. Ryan Blaney's average finish at Martinsville in the next gen car is in 6 races is 3.5. Ryan Blaney has been very good on the short tracks over the last couple of years in the next gen car. As I said before, it helps when your driver basically goes, yeah, I'm not going out there. Yeah, I'm going to run a couple laps. I'm going to see what the field looks like. And if it goes crazy, I'm just going to pull back. We have the points provision. I don't want to go into the next round basically with a beaten up car like Kyle Larson and Josh Berry did. There's a lot of mechanical and aerodynamic issues that happen if he goes in with a beaten up car. You saw it with Kyle Larson. You did. Now, not every single situation was Larson. It wasn't mechanical. I mean, yeah, he got bumped out of the way. He flew into the infield and all that type of stuff. But the thing is that if that car's not beaten up, does that car make those many issues? Probably not. And I think that's what Ryan Blaney was looking at. Ryan Blaney went there this weekend to go win the race. He just came up short. He was a mistake short too. He went in one of the turns very hot, which kind of screwed his momentum up. And I think if that doesn't happen, I think that we have a last lap pass with Ryan Blaney. But again, I don't think I'm surprised that Ryan Blaney was good at Bowman's Gray. I just don't. Again, 3.5 average finish in 6 races at Martinsville. Kind of was the arrow pointing in the trend of direction of him being a true threat at this race. Next up, coming out of this weekend, we talked about with Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick. I want to say this, okay? I said it earlier in the show. I thought the high line for me was going to be a nightmare for these drivers. We saw it at Martinsville. People try to outside lane. They go maybe 2 to 3 laps and they're like, no, I got to get down low. I can't do this anymore. I got to get low because if not, I'm going to go basically fall backward in the train. On Sunday, I got to give credit to Denny Hamlin and Tyler Reddick. Did the high lane work? I would say yes, it did. For a little bit. I think it worked for a little bit. And here's why. Because at the end of the day, yes, Hamlin got to the lead, got to the control of the race until Chase got around him. Reddick was trying to pass Chris Buescher for almost like the first 50 laps. He eventually got around Buescher in the high lane. Then Hamlin got him in the high lane. But the one thing that I think what killed both Denny Hamlin's day and Tyler Reddick, which, by the way, Denny Hamlin in this race finished, give me a second, Hamlin finished third. He started falling off basically towards the last 25 laps in the second half. And then Tyler Reddick fell all the way down to 8th. I think the biggest problem with running that high line, which both of them were doing, and they were passing cars for a little bit in this race up in that high line, the worst thing that could have happened was it was a tire eater. It killed his tires. It killed both of them, right? And when you have an abnormal pit strategy because you're running 100 laps, then you're pitting for a halftime, and then you're running 100 laps, it's unsustainable. It just is. And I think Hamlin and Reddick both showed you that it worked when everyone was on fresh set of tires and everyone was basically on the same even playing field. It worked. But eventually, when you run that many laps running the high line, which Reddick did for a good portion to get around Buescher, and then Hamlin did as well to get to the lead and get back into the lead, it just killed the tires and it changed basically the air. It just killed the mechanical side of the car. The track was just too flat, and unfortunately, you didn't have that strategy to go down pit road to make the adjustments to continue doing it. Now, what's going to be interesting, and I think maybe Reddick and Hamlin both did this past weekend. Can drivers start running the high line at Martinsville? That's going to be the thing that's going to be interesting for me. If they can do this at Martinsville, this could be a whole different game changer going into 2025. Like I said, did the high line work at Bowman's Gray? It did, but it killed the tires, and especially with having the pit strategy or having no pit strategy, you just had a halftime. It just wasn't sustainable. Coming out of Bowman Gray, a couple shout outs this week. Let's give shout outs to Trackhouse Racing, honestly. Two of the 3 drivers, Chastain and Shane Van Gisbergen. Both Trackhouse cars was Shane Van Gisbergen and Ross Chastain finished in the top 10. Chastain finished 6th after starting 17th in this race. I honestly said this to a lot of people after the race was over. I said if Blaney didn't do what he did, 23rd to 2nd, which is a remarkable feat, but if he did not do what he did, Chastain's being discussed as, wow, look at what Chastain did in this race. He went from 17th all the way up to 6th. Chastain was good at the end of this race. I mean, he had a car that was sustainable. Now, granted, there was a lot of cars that were spinning out. There was a lot of cars that was beating and banning, but Chastain just managed the race the way that Chastain usually does. And I thought it was an incredible run by the one team. Now, Shane Van Gisbergen, let's go back to him. Right? Ends up finishing this race in 9th. Started 10th. Okay. One thing I want to talk about real quick. I posted this after the heat races. I said, wow, shout out to Trackhouse Racing. Shout out to Shane Van Gisbergen. I really liked what I saw from Shane Van Gisbergen this weekend. with Shane Van Gisbergen, a lot of people came back and they're like, I don't know why you're surprised because he finished in the top 10 in Martinsville. Nah, he didn't finish top 10 in Martinsville. He finished 12th in the fall at Martinsville. He finished 12th. Had a good race. I'm not taking that away. He had a great race at Martinsville in the fall. But here's the other thing, too, right? Yes, he finished 12th at Martinsville last year. But one race where he finished 12th does not indicate to me that he's going to be good in another short track. To me, right now, that 12th at Martinsville is an outlier. That's an outlier race for me. Do I think that Shane Van Gisbergen may have learned something on the short tracks? I'm sure. I think that 12th definitely helped him out because look, he finished ninth at the Clash. He had a good weekend. Shane Van Gisbergen had a good, solid, great weekend for Trackhouse Racing. He did. But for me, like I said, I can't say, well, he had a 12th at Martinsville and then he had, this finish of 10. Like, okay, that's great. That's two races. Now, if I get more data and he gets more put in the top 10, if at the end of the season, if SVG at the end of the season ends up finishing every short track or, 5 out of the 6 races on short tracks, he finishes all in the top 10 except for one, yeah, then he has definitely learned a lot. I think a lot of people were hyped on Shane Van Gisbergen, especially for this track, because it fit his driving style. Heavy braking zones. And that's what you are notorious for doing on a road course is a heavy braking zone track. And that's what makes him so good. I'm interested to see if I'm interested to see if this 12th at Martinsville in the fall and the top 10 or the 9th place finish he just got at Bowman's Gray. I'm interested to see if this is going to translate and correlate into better results in the regular season. He's someone, and I'm very high. I'm very pro Trackhouse. I'm a very pro Trackhouse guy. And on this podcast, I think a lot of you over the last 2 years now have heard how high I speak of Trackhouse racing. I like Ross Chastain. I think he's very talented. I like Shane Van Gisbergen. Obviously, he's very talented. And I like Daniel Suarez. I root for Suarez. I think Suarez has the talent too, by the way. I think that Trackhouse, I think Trackhouse after last year, with the disappointment year that they had, where they had Suarez win a race, Chastain win a race, but Chastain didn't make the playoffs, kind of in their flagship car. I'm looking forward to see what Trackhouse can do. And for me, with the Clash, I think it was a good start to the 2025 campaign. Again, will it translate and correlate into the regular season? I don't know. But I do know they have the equipment to make it feel like it's going to translate. Final question, Mike, going out to the audience. I heard this from SiriusXM Radio. I'm going to kind of, piggyback off of it. Pete Pistone kind of brought up a good point. Pete Pistone basically said he's like, listen, next year I would move the Clash out of Bowman's Gray and put it into an NFL stadium again. I would try to put it either in Dallas or Seattle. For me, I was kind of astonished when he said Dallas because I'm like, really? I'm like, you think that a NASCAR Cup Series race is going to be held into a dome? And obviously in Dallas, you're probably going to they do have the retractable roof. I get it. But I'm also kind of like, if you're going to put it inside, which he was wanting them to do, I don't think NASCAR would do that. I just don't. But it kind of sparked this question from me. And it goes, should the Clash rotate venues moving forward? Fox kind of alluded to it during the pre-race ceremonies. But should the Clash rotate moving forward? We did the Coliseum, we did Daytona for so many years. We did the Coliseum for the last 3. We did Bowman's Gray this past weekend. We did it this year. I mean, I'm all on board with the Clash rotating. I am. And if you've listened to me for a while, I know the street course is probably not going to be renewed in Chicago. For the last couple of years, I've been saying I'd be all on board with a 4th of July street course race rotating within multiple cities within this country. I think it would be remarkable and it would be awesome to have a 5 to 7 year rotation between 5 to 7 different cities. And on the 4th of July weekend, that's where we race, is on that city street course. It relieves the pressure of each city forking out money each year for it, and it sets you up for the next couple of years, right? I feel the same way about the Clash. I do. And I know I'm going to get people that are going to argue with me and be like, well, Matt, your podcast is stupid because you don't want it back in Daytona. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm sorry, guys. They are not putting the Clash back at Daytona ever again. They're not. They're not. And people are going to argue with me about it. They're not going to. And here's why. Number one, they're not going to keep teams down in Daytona for 2 weeks. And where do I come up with this 2 week process? Well, they usually ran the Clash the weekend before the Daytona 500, right? They did that whole weekend with the Clash and the qualifying, and then they went to Daytona. Well, here's a plot twist for you guys. The Super Bowl is in between the Clash and the Daytona 500. NASCAR would be absolutely stupid and reckless if they tried to compete with the NFL. And I know I'm going to have fans go, "Well, you know what, Matt? We don't watch football in this house." Well, that sucks because about 59 million people are going to tune into the Super Bowl this Sunday. You're like one of them, okay? NASCAR can't afford, and these teams can't afford to keep these teams down in Daytona for almost half a month. They can't. Listen, I get it, but I saw seriously fast motorsports. They posted it out there as well, and credit to them. They said if you wanted the Clash back at Daytona so bad, why didn't you show up? That's a fair point, right? 15,000 fans, I think they said at the last Clash in 2020. 2021 doesn't count because of the outlier of the pandemic. But 2020, I believe Seriously Fast Motorsports had the record out there that only 15,000 fans showed up for the Clash on that Sunday to watch Eric Jones win. We had 17,000 at Bowman's Gray. No, I'm not saying 17. I'm not saying 17,000 is more of a sellout than 15 because the venue's smaller at Bowman's Gray than Daytona. But the demand wasn't there for Daytona anymore. It just wasn't. And that's why I really like the Clash at the LA Coliseum because I thought the Coliseum was a fun event. I thought the Coliseum, it was warm. I thought it was fun. I thought it was very interesting that they built a track inside of a football stadium. That's the coolest thing I've seen so far from NASCAR in a long time. Well, there's many things, but that's one of them. Sorry. But I do think that we should rotate. I do. I think we should rotate the Clash like we do with the Chicago with the street course in the summer. We'll talk about the street course when we get there. But um, venues I'd be interested in running the Clash at. Well, we just did Bowman's Gray. Okay, I know JB McMurray said Hickory Speedway. I think that'd be pretty cool. That'd be a good one. I would love to see the Clash back at LA Coliseum. I would. For me, I would like to see probably the Clash more in like Southern California, probably more of like the Southwest, maybe like the West Coast to try to get people more initiative. The interesting one that I saw today was Pete Pistone said Seattle. Now, I don't think necessarily Seattle. The weather's going to be the wacky one with the Clash in Seattle. But if North Carolina showed you anything with Bowman's Gray, it doesn't matter if it's cold, warm, whatever. People are going to show up. They're interested. So again, another question for the audience: should the Clash rotate venues moving forward, and where would you go? So, all right, folks. With all that being said, that wraps up my Clash discussion with all of you. Thank you so much for everyone tuning in onto the live stream. Very quiet, blown engine chat line tonight. If you're still online, you want to mention something real quick about the blown engine line, feel free to hit the chat up real quick before we close out tonight's episode. But if not, like I said, I want to thank everybody for taking time out tonight, being on the live stream, listening to us. Again, if you love what you're hearing, follow us on Facebook, the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Follow us, subscribe to us on YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast channel. A lot of fun, a lot of discussions with all of you. Again, thank you so much to everybody that supports us. It's been a great, awesome 3 years with all of you. It really has. And we're going into year 3 now, and I can't thank you all enough. And when I first started this, I did not know how this would go. I did not know what direction it would go. I didn't. And for me to get an opportunity to talk NASCAR with all of you, it's just been an absolute awesome adventure the last couple of years. some nights definitely I'm like, damn, like I wish we had more, all that type of stuff. But again, thank you so much to all of you for listening. Again, follow us on Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, YouTube channel at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Subscribe to us. Follow us if you love what you're hearing on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music. Next week, we're going to be doing power rankings going into 2025. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be a lot of fun. And we'll probably do a little discussion on prospects. Depends how long the power rankings go. But then we'll be setting you right up to Daytona. We will be right there with you at Daytona. Hopefully, a fun announcement next week in regards to the Daytona 500 from us. Unfortunately, we will not be down there, but maybe set up something where it'll be a lot of fun. Again, thank you so much for all of you listening tonight. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl, too, by the way. EAGLES, Eagles. You know where I'm going. And hopefully next week I'll be chanting EAGLES with all of you as we get you ready to go for the Daytona 500. Be well, be safe. We'll chat next week. Good night.